Please turn on your microphones. This is the regular city council meeting for the city of Nowthen, March 10th, 2022, 7 o'clock p.m. Before we get started here, I would like to introduce one of our office staff that has not been to our meetings before, Natalie Johnson. Thank you for being here and your hard work at the city. Obviously, and Lieutenant now, Lieutenant Bill Jacobson, our new liaison from the Sheriff's Department. Glad to have you. It's your first official meeting.
Yes, sir.
And Planner Stockman, Administrator Boyles, and then the City Council. So thank you all for being here tonight. Are you doing it, Frank, or is Natalie going to run?
A roll call?
Yeah.
I'd be glad to. I finally have it down.
All right.
Mayor.
Frank, would you call roll?
Okay. Mayor Pilon.
Present.
Councilmember Alders.
Here.
Councilmember Blake.
Here.
Councilmember Greenberg, pardon me. Gee. Well, I thought I had it down.
Here.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Rainville.
Present.
And also in attendance is obviously Planner Stockman and Sheriff's Liaison, Lieutenant Jacobson. Do we have any amendments to the presented agenda here tonight?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
could I, under number 8, add a F for discussion of 1W, 1P?
1W.
1 as in numeral, or number 1,
1W.
capital P, and number 1. Or 1W,
1W.
1P. 1W, 1P. 1 watershed, 1 plan.
Okay.
All right, any other amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville?
I would just, I'd like to add 8G, as in George, just a quick update on where we are with the newsletter.
What?
Where we are with the newsletter.
Any other amendments? Seeing and hearing none, I will accept a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
A second.
Greenberg moves and Rainville seconds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. Tonight, consent agenda, we have the approval of City Council meeting minutes for the regular meeting, February 8th, 2022. Approval of claims, February 8th through February 28th, and the Treasurer's Report. We have the approval of the contract with Safety Assure for OSHA services. We have the approval of an ordinance mandating a penalty amount for Bill Superette for tobacco sales violation in 2021. We have approval of an ordinance mandating a penalty amount for Burns Bottle Shop for 2021 tobacco sale violation. We are request to accept the resignation of firefighter Jeremy Strecker and the approval of resolution 2022-08 authorizing dental insurance benefit for current employees. I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Mayor, can we make one correction to it?
Yes.
Letter B, actually with some of the late bills that came in for Natalie, we're approving claims through March 10th.
With that correction, do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as stands.
Motion from Councilmember Blake,
I'll
and
second.
I will second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have honored guests tonight. Our assessors are here, Eric Spoquist and Mary Wells, and your cohort, Chris Larson. And Eric, is your microphone red there or green?
Just tap it, tap the red part. The bottom.
Larson with an O-N? Correct. All right.
solid red, we're good?
No,
No,
green.
tap it just with your finger, and it'll turn green.
Tap lightly on the bottom
On
there.
the bottom.
There we go. All right, well, thank you very much, Mayor, members of the council. I don't know if anybody calls assessors esteemed around here, but that's okay. I'll take what I can get, so thank you very much.
Positive thinking.
Exactly. So my name's Eric Skoquist, and maybe, as you had stated here, I have Mary Wells with me, and then Chris Larson as well. We kind of do a lot of the assessing work. I do it primarily in the city of Nowthen, but we do some other areas around here as well. So thank you for the chance to come tonight and kind of just give you a filling in yourselves and then the members of the public, kind of what's been going on in the world of property valuation and assessment. So just a quick recap, what our job is our job is to set the taxable value and the classification of all properties in the city of Nowthen. By the state of Minnesota, that's a city responsibility. And so in Anoka County, you kind of have all the different ways that can happen. You can have a city like Anoka, Fridley, Coon Rapids, they have their own staff in-house, their own kind of sub-department or division. You can also have it where you cut a check, which a lot of cities do, and you guys had in the past, to the county, and then the county will have workers do that for you. And the third option is to have an independent contractor, and that is what we do for you as the city. So we work hand in hand with the county to go around and set the valuations every year. And your value in the city, in the entire state of Minnesota, is based on estimated market value. So our goal is to try to target what properties are selling for. And we do it a little different than a bank appraiser because the timelines we look at are slightly different. We kind of look on an annual basis, what was going on last year, and then we end up set the values. So if anybody that's been around remembers, that kind of gets you in a little bit of a tricky situation when values are dropping. You go back to 2008, 9, and 10, we're setting values based on the sales last year when things were really dropping. So, a lot of people would come and be a little upset with us, and we'd have to explain the process. But in a market like today, it kind of goes the other direction. And so the reason we wanted to come is just give you a quick fill-in on what's been going on in the city. So our last study that we were just setting values for the beginning of this year, there was 47 good sales we used, and those are ones that are judged to be open market transactions. So if you're selling it to your kid, we wouldn't count that. If it's an estate sale and people are just kind of dividing it out and moving on, those types of things don't count. And then there's others that are in an unqualified category that we still look at. They're new construction ones. So the last year value was as a vacant lot and it sells. Well, we didn't have the right value on it. We're not going to use that as a basis, but it's good for us to understand when we're setting rates, what's new construction going for, what's land value, things like that. So to kind of get the broad scheme here, what's ended up occurring is it's been if you go maybe to the first slide here, it'll say residential values, and this is kind of generic and broad, but values up 15 to 22% on average. And so you could be somebody, if you were in a neighborhood or a style of home that wasn't, we were closer on, maybe you only went up 10%. But it's also not uncommon for there to be 25 to 30% increases depending on the houses and the styles and the locations. In the city here, this is actually lower than some of the others around. Not by a lot, but if you go to north to St. Francis or some of the other areas we work in, 25 to 30% is more the median. So there's probably a little bit of reasons for that, but I think a lot of it has to do with some of the entry-level homes. Just it's gotten so expensive that in some of those other markets, those entry-level homes ended up going up so much more. And not that you don't have that, and now then you just have a lot of, the average price for a home here is going to be more than it is north of you in St. Francis or somewhere else. So I think that's mitigated it a little bit, but it's a large increase. Similar to Anoka County, in general, everything in Anoka County residential-wise, you're in that 25% range, give or take. So it's been strong. It's been a really hot market, and just supply and demand is what's caused the situation we're in. And not even just Anoka County. You can go throughout the state. We do things in smaller jurisdictions, rural areas. It's everywhere. It's just kind of what's been going on in the world right now. So that's something I just wanted to let people know. If you go to the next slide here, this is just the total market value. We took out the new construction just to kind of show you, just based on the market, this is the valuation of what would have occurred without new construction and how things increased. So this total value of the properties in the city went up 17.5%.
That's all homes, or that's the 47 that you?
That's all. That's all the, I think that's all the residential, right? Or is that the commercial?
everything.
Okay, that's commercial,
everything.
industrial, everything in there. The overall valuation went up. So this is gonna be almost exactly what you have. We just took the new construction out because we didn't wanna show that it went up a larger amount just because of new builds and things. But that's kind of generally, that's how you've been going. So if you look at this chart, they'll give you a little bit of a history of how things have gone in the city based on their estimated market value back to 2016. So, you know, there's been a steady increase, but this last year was just one where it's gone up a lot more. And if we went back a ways, you know, you go back to 2008, I started to notice, and maybe Mary, you can fill me in your thoughts, but things started to level out maybe in the 2015-16 area where you got back to that peak again, and now we've just kind of continually gone up from there. And a lot of this, you know, if you talk to everybody and you're familiar with what's going on, land prices have been going up, building construction's been going up, labor's been going up, everything has just been kind of a perfect storm of what's been happening out there. And I wanted to let folks know, if you go to the very next slide here, this is probably more math than anybody wants to deal with, but if you're curious and you want to, it's here. So we just took an example of a house here, listed for sale in June for $429,000. It closed in July for $456,000, so higher than the listed price. One thing that's in here, it says state time trend. What they like us to do, especially in these very fluid markets, is they say, well, you know, if you had a house that sold a year ago, that same house isn't going to sell for the exact same price at the end of the year. So they want us to give a little bit more weight to the newer sales, and they adjust the older sales forward a little. All it is just a good little kind of test for us to not have such a disparity in certain areas. So that particular house, we had an estimated market value on it prior to the sale of $394,300. So if you do a quick math of what we had and what it sold for, we were at 81.42%. The state of Minnesota requires us to be on average or on median here about 90 to 105% of the sale prices. So not every sale needs to be in there, but if you aggregate them all together, you better be in that range, because if you don't, the state will come and they'll adjust it. They're not going to look at it with a fine-tooth comb. They're just going to say, whole city's got to go up 5% or down 5 or whatever. So we raised the value on this particular one 3.82% to $448,800, and our ratio is 92.7. So that's just kind of a snapshot of how we go about doing things. And now those increases that on this one, it wasn't because we're just going to raise this one up. We kind of do that to everything in the city. And as I said, there's certain styles and certain neighborhoods we might have tweaked, and we work with the county depending on, you know, they look at their whole county and say, this is generally what we think houses need to do. They'll make adjustments to building rates and things. We'll adjust our land, and if it's not right, we're going to tweak things a little bit more and adjust things up or down. So that's kind of a snapshot of how we go about doing our job. And I'll just touch on quick commercial properties. Not as many here, but what we've done and what has been typical is apartments went up about 6%, which I don't think you guys really have much of that. Commercial properties, so, you know, think gas stations, stores, that type of stuff. That one was a little bit more moderated. That was probably around 10%. But industrial properties has been something where it just has gone crazy. And so that's similar to houses where you're seeing 20 to 30% increases on industrial properties, mini storages, manufacturing, general storage shops, that type of thing. That's just really what's been going on. So, and again, this is all based on sales. And what I wanted to just finally touch on with everybody is when you hear these percentage increases, that does not mean your taxes are going up 30% if your value goes up 30%. How it works is as I touched on that estimated market value before, what happens is you guys set a levy every year, the school district does, the county does, and then that is basically whatever those needs are determined to be, it spreads it out amongst all the property value. So theoretically, if everybody's value, farms, houses, industrial, everything went up the same percentage, and everybody's levies stayed the same, you decided you weren't going to spend any more money this year, everybody's taxes would stay the same. Really what we're doing is when we're setting your value, it's just adjusting your little sliver of the pie. So if you're doing similar to what somebody else is doing, more than likely your taxes aren't going to have a huge impact. What you see a lot of times is maybe houses go up and commercial property doesn't. Well, that burden starts to shift more to houses. They get a little bit larger percentage of that pie, but sometimes it'll go in reverse. And so going back to the 2008, 9, 10 area, if people go back and look at your taxes, a lot of their taxes actually dropped during that time frame because houses dropped off so much quicker than commercial property did. So you can kind of look, and it's complicated, it's not the easiest to understand, but I just want people to know that doesn't mean your taxes are gonna go up, you know, the percentage your house does, because everybody's kind of in the same boat. And feel free to call if you have questions about your property or whatnot. I'll be more than happy to go over it with you, try to show some of the sales, some comparable ones that are out there. And I think if people just, once I talk with folks and I say, these are some comparables, this is what's been going on out there, then they understand it more. You know, they're not necessarily the happiest in the world, I get it. Unless you're selling, then it's okay. But otherwise, that's just, the job we try to do is try to be fair and equitable with everybody and kind of explain what we can. Because I know it's not the easiest process to understand. So I don't know if you folks have any questions for me tonight or whatnot, but when you touch on the newsletter, we did mention we are going to have an article in there kind of explaining this, and then also a map that shows every year when I go out and I'm looking at things, usually in the summertime. I do it 1/5 of the city every year. I kind of go and I knock on every door, and it doesn't mean I get in every one or would need to, but I have to visit every property. So it'll give you an idea, and you just say, here, who's this guy going hanging out through the neighborhood driving his white Jeep around? It's gonna be me, but I'd like people to know, and if you ever have questions, you can always call City Hall as well, so they're aware that I'm in an area and they can kind of tell you who's doing what.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes at the truth and taxation hearing, we will have residents show up and say, gee whiz, I don't agree with the valuation of my property. Wrong meeting, we both know that. When is there opportunity to be heard on that topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you'll basically get 2 notices. So if you watch your mailboxes, everybody, the next couple weeks, you'll get something from Anoka County, and it'll have 2 pieces of paper in there. And they change the colors, so I can't tell you which color, but one will be your notice of valuation, which is what our job is, to set your value for 2022. And when you get that, it'll have the phone number of the assessor, it'll have my number down there. You can feel free to give me a call or email me or whatever you're most comfortable with, and we can go over that information. Cities basically will have, sometimes they have a meeting, you know, they'll have a local board of equalization meeting. In the city of Nowthen, you guys have opted to have something called an open book, which basically means the appeals don't go to you as a council, but the county can always override anything I do. And so people have a little bit more informal opportunity to contact me up through June. I can't remember the date this year, if it's June 15th maybe, right in the middle of June. And through that whole time frame, you know, we can work on it. I can come out and visit. I can make sure the date is right. And so once you get that notice, that's the perfect time to call. Once the county board of equalization is done after the middle of June, then it's very difficult to change that number unless there's an error or something like that. And so once our numbers are set, that's when you folks do your budgeting and whatnot in the summer and into the fall and set all that information in. And once the county has our numbers and then they have all the taxing jurisdictions levies, that's when they calculate the taxes, and you'll get your truth and taxation notice in November that says this is your proposed taxes based on your value and based on the budgets that have been set. And at that time, a lot of people, you know, they'll see the percent go up now or whatever, and they don't contact you until November. But by November, it's too late. It's already down the, you know, unless there's a big, you know, error, like I said. So once you get your notice, if you have questions, neighbors do, whatever, please contact us. The sooner the better. And if any of you folks ever hear anybody, you know, out there that are having concerns, send them our way as well. Because it's a lot easier. I'm not saying we can't change it. It's tricky and it's difficult and it's out of my hands at that point. County needs to approve it, but if we can deal with it prior to the middle of June, it makes everybody's life a lot easier, and then you have, you know, make sure that we're treating everybody fairly.
And just to clarify that with all these other prices going up, we have a contract with you, so you're not getting more because the value
Well,
of the house is
no, absolutely not. Our contract is set with you every five years, which you mentioned it. We are up this year, which is a great year to come up right after you raise everything. But it is what it is. So our value is purely based on how many parcels there are in the city. So if there's more development, you know, there's more work for us that we have to do. But that is set. We don't get a percentage or a cut or anything like that. So that's good question, so Mr. Mayor. But if you ever have any questions, council or anybody else, I think they have our contact information. I think it's on the website. If not, you can call City Hall and they'll get it to you. And then
On the
I can always,
website, it will be in the newsletter, so.
yes, exactly. That'll be in there as well. So thank you for letting me come and
Council, anything else before you sit down? All right.
all right. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you all for being here, taking time to be with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Next item would be the floor items. Mr. Brown, you actually weren't looking to speak on the floor items, were you?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Signed the wrong sheets.
Yeah, okay.
All right, no floor items tonight. We'll go to the sheriff's report and the premier report from Lieutenant Jacobson. Let's see how he does. Thank you, sir.
No pressure.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for your time this evening. You have a brief update regarding February activity in the city with the sheriff's office. We did respond to 80 calls for service. Those calls included 3 calls out to the bar none facility, 2 alarm calls, 5 medicals, and 2 animal calls for service. Some calls of note, we did respond out to bar none. Those calls were runaway calls, pretty inconsequential as far as police resources, no force used, resolved safely by the sheriff's office. We did have a couple calls involving some of our special deputies. If you guys aren't familiar with those folks, those are our reserve volunteer deputies. They patrol on a regular basis, and these folks do this in addition to their normal work. A lot of them have full-time jobs, but they'll come in after work and work a night shift for us, volunteering their time. They drive marked patrol cars. They wear similar uniforms. A couple calls that they handled in the city of Nowthen over the last month on the 4th. They responded while on patrol to a stalled vehicle on Viking Boulevard. Again, they were just checking this person's welfare, found they were fine, assisted them with calling a tow truck. Those are the kind of services that these folks can provide. Another call, they handled one of the animal calls, Tiger Street and Viking. Again, this was some livestock in the road that they were able to safely wrangle, so with the assistance of the homeowner there. So another call that jumped out to me, the 20,000 block Cleary Road, we did get a call from a neighbor. They saw the lights on a neighbor's house. They knew this neighbor to be out of town. The deputies came out. They found no problem. That's what we love. We love to have people call because something doesn't seem right, and then we come out and everything's fine. We'll take those calls all day because we prefer the alternative, which might be someone calls or someone sees something and they decide not to call. They're not sure if they should call. Please always call. You're not bothering us. We're awake anyway, so let us know if you see something out of place. Also, that jumped out, a lot of traffic-related stuff last month. I think that some of that had to do with some of the weather we were dealing with. We had 8 vehicle crashes, 2 with injuries. So just remind folks that as the road conditions do deteriorate, please be careful. Hopefully I'll knock on wood here. Hopefully we're out of the major part of the winter storms when it comes to that too. And we did have 2 catalytic converter thefts. Not something I've seen too much of in the Nowthen reports in the past. So that's something that we've passed on our patrol commander to pass on to the deputies, that we need to be on the lookout for that. Again, that usually involves cutting, loud, tools, that kind of thing. So again, if you see something in the neighborhood that doesn't make sense, if you hear something, again, please call. We're always nearby to come out and help. There's plenty of... Was that at a residence or was that at a commercial property?
I believe one was a residence, one was a commercial property. And the ones in the neighborhood, yeah, it gets loud. I mean, but the problem is they can do it quite quickly, especially if this is what they do. They cut them quite quickly. So, but I believe it was one of each last month. I'll make a note to
I'll say it is quick, because I
Yes.
junked a vehicle recently, and its value was its catalytic converter,
Yes,
and it didn't take them 3 minutes.
right.
Took a Sawzall out, and I couldn't believe that thing was in and out of there just like that, so.
Yeah, and they have quite a bit of value, and that's why they're targeted, of course. And anyone who's had to file an insurance claim related to those knows that they're very expensive to replace. So, if you go to Google and type in Minnesota catalytic converter thefts, there's a lot of resources on there about how you can get your catalytic converters marked, because
recycling places aren't gonna accept them if they're marked or they have serial numbers or paint on them from, an insurance company or a police department. So, it's not a service that we offer directly, but, those services are out there for folks if they're looking at that. Insurance companies, would save a ton of money, with those marked catalytic converters, cause they're not valuable at that point, so. A couple miscellaneous things. We've been working closely with the fire department over at Nowthen Fire. Continuing the planning for the substation. We've been out there a few times, taking some measurements and getting prepared to get some furniture and equipment in there. The Nowthen Fire Department has invited our deputies to begin using that location as a break spot, which we absolutely love, because as you probably know, you've been there, it's a beautiful facility. It's got a lot of nice amenities. So we've encouraged our patrol teams that are on this side of the county or in the city of Nowthen to use that if they're available. If they're taking their break, it's a great spot to take a break. So, and that work will continue until the new contract starts in July. We'll get that up and running, and we'll get the car over there at that point. So that's what I have for you so far today. Does anyone have any questions or anything else I can try to help clarify?
Council? Yeah?
You did a good job.
Oh, thank you.
Frank has a question.
Yes, sir.
So we read in the paper about a potential $7,000 per officer incentive in Minneapolis. And I know Commander Heath had referred to something of
Yes.
that nature. Is that what you're seeing, or is it simply too early to tell? Negotiations haven't been undertaken.
Negotiations for all of our contracts, well, the vast majority of our contracts are underway at this point. I'm not aware of any contracts being settled, but that's not something I directly handle. That's the chief deputy handles those negotiations. But we do expect wages to increase. We're seeing competition from other agencies, especially agencies that are struggling to keep people. Thankfully, here at the sheriff's office, we've done a nice job of retaining the people we have. But with any hiring situation, you get people in, you train them, and it gets pretty expensive if they walk back out the door. So we've been relatively lucky in that regard. We've seen some of it, of course, but there are agencies who are struggling quite a bit more with that, and their response is to increase pay and increase signing bonuses. I'm not sure what is or isn't on the table for that at this point, but yeah, as the commander mentioned a few months ago, we do expect wage increases throughout this year and next year for the new contract. Again, that won't affect the contract you guys signed for this year. That's already set. Those funds are set. But potentially in 2023 for that contract, we'll see increases in wages. So.
We just want to thank, we have fire representatives here as well, the partnership that you expressed there, that let you in early and get set up and to utilize the facilities there. We are proud of the expansion we put in there, and it is a nice place to get in out of the cold and soon be able to do reports and things indoors. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a nice place to be, and we do appreciate it. We've, like I said, I've been over there with some of our patrol staff a few times here, making sure that we are getting our plans in place for some of the infrastructure that we're going to need over there. So, feeling good about it.
We appreciate the partnership, so thank you guys as well.
Yes.
So.
Thank you so much.
And just so you know, that I know there's a standing offer from Bill's. Anybody wants to do paperwork in front of Bill's Superette, park the car there.
Perfect.
I wouldn't be surprised if the local restaurants would invite the same. But
Absolutely.
we like seeing the cars around, and we look forward to the expanded contract. So.
Absolutely, as do we. Thank you.
Thank you. Fire department, I think we took care of the resignation. There was nothing else, gentlemen, anywhere. Okay. Planning and zoning, approval of the Woodhaven preliminary plat. So Liz, you want to?
Sure, Mayor and Council, we're looking at a 9-lot preliminary plat entitled Woodhaven. It's on Old Viking Boulevard between Cleary Road and Sodium Street. The public hearing was held way back in November. Planning Commission recommended approval. We met with the two engineers, the applicant's engineer and the city engineer, just Wednesday. And they discussed the final issues to be addressed, some stormwater issues. And then we're waiting on Anoka County's review of the drainage. And other than that, we'll get the final plat prepared and brought to you next month with a development agreement. So our office recommends approval of this 9-lot preliminary plat. So
Did we take care of the right-of-way for the trail? A request from Karen Blaska?
Well, that is a separate topic. We can bring that to you next month if you'd like. What occurred at Planning and Zoning council members was that there is a trail easement on Potassium Street, which is just north of this development. And the property owner that is dedicating additional right-of-way to make that Potassium Street a permanent cul-de-sac does not care to keep that easement along the road. It was never built. So since it's a cul-de-sac and it's not gonna lead anywhere, it makes sense to vacate that easement. And the mayor suggested that the city could cover that cost instead of having the applicants put in the money for that. Normally it can be initiated either by residents or the city council. So we can go forward with that in April if you'd like. Just advertise that public hearing. So what would have to happen is we would have the city engineer prepare a graphic of the easement to go along with the resolution vacating that. Would that be acceptable?
I think so. Council?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
The other question I had was on the Anoka Trail though, running along Old Viking.
Well, we questioned the applicant on that, and they did put a note on the preliminary plat, which states possible future county trail. They didn't show the actual trail because there's wetland right up to the road there. So the county's gonna have to do some wetland work anyway if it does occur.
And it's nice to have that up front before people, excuse me, start buying and then say, oh, I didn't never knew this was coming, so.
If you actually want it shown, I mean, you should say so. There is a note on there that states, possible future trail, but
Yeah, my experience has been possible future gets lost when somebody buys a house and then later when the county actually comes and remediates the wetland and puts it in, they're all surprised.
well,
I
they
didn't
can,
think that was possible, so,
yeah, pardon me, Mr. Mayor.
yeah, planner stop.
Yeah, they could still be surprised if they don't look at the preliminary plat or the grading plan, but yes, if we do our best effort to make that known, then I would agree with you that it would be a good idea to just show that.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
Just to clarify something, to stop when using a public hearing, so you're talking at the council meeting or at P and Z?
It's too late to do the March P and Z. We could do, since we probably wouldn't get anybody typically anyway, not a room full, right, for that type of a hearing, we could do it at council if council's okay with that.
I think it'd be okay with council.
I would agree to that.
Okay, we'll do that then.
Any other questions on that, council? If that's the case, I will accept a motion on the approval of the Woodhaven preliminary plat.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat of the Skolkus Woodhaven wetland, or Skolkus Woodhaven lot development.
I'll second that.
A motion from Councilmember Alders, a second from Councilmember Rainville. Any other discussion? Anything else, Liz?
Just something of interest, I thought,
Is it related to this?
yes.
Okay.
There's a field access that comes in from Cleary Road, and the county's allowing it to stay, so because there's a culvert there, and it acts as a weir to hold back stormwater. So it was a completely different stormwater analysis, with or without that. So the applicants are required to take the gravel out and then narrow it up and then seed the vegetation, and so nobody can use it as a driving lane or a turnaround, but they allowed it to remain as a stormwater control.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
to Ms. Stockman, is that then memorialized in what the developer will get and the owner?
Yes, that
Okay.
will be memorialized on the stormwater plan.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to city council items. 8A, approval of resolution confirming 2022 precincts and polling places for the city of Nowthen. As you can see by a submittal here. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to interrupt.
Right. As you can see here, we, in our last 10 years, according to census, we've only gained 90 residents, so there is no need to redistrict our precincts. And so what we're confirming here to the county is precinct 2 will continue to be the St. Francis School District, and precinct 1 will be those areas in Nowthen that are Elk River and Anoka school districts. Same as they are, the polling place for both will still continue to be in the fire station for both the August primary and the November general election. Any question or comments on that? Seeing and hearing none, I would accept a motion to approve the resolution establishing precincts and polling places.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
I motion that we approve the resolution 2022-7 confirming precinct and polling places for the city of Nowthen.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Blake.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Rainville. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have a process that we established last year, and we have an opportunity now to utilize it. We've had a resignation on our planning and zoning, and so you have before you what we agreed to last year. And what I would request is that we acknowledge that this is what we put in place last year, and then authorize staff to implement the process. Get an ad in, get the timeline going, and accept applications, and we'll set up the interview process.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I would move that council authorize staff to use the existing forms and processes to start the process for filling the vacancy at planning and zoning.
Motion from Councilmember Rainville. You have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Greenberg. Any other discussion?
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
so that means that how many people can apply for this? Is there a limit?
It's a 30-day window for applications, so it's unlimited.
Okay, and then they will come before us and we interview them
Correct,
and we make the decision.
correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so now we have item C, the discussion on the position to be filled, job description, process timeline, and participants, and that is to the full-time replacement for what was the city clerk position. We have a hiring subcommittee in place of Councilmember Blake and myself, working with Administrator Boyles on this process. But one of the questions that we have is, have we put thought to what is the position we're trying to fill? Do we want to go clerk treasurer again? Do we want to have administrative clerk? Do we want to have an administrator? So that's one of the questions that we would like feedback from the council on. Obviously, depending on that decision, then you formulate the job descriptions, and then we move down the process and look at the timeline and how we're going to work with that. One of the considerations that we have is right now our initial intent was to work with Frank and Linda and myself forward in this process. We do have options of working with third-party agencies to help in that process. The advantage is they do this for a living. They have a lot of resources. They have a lot of connections. They have formats and templates that are easily converted to our particular city. They can work with us to identify what is exactly we're looking for. One of the downsides is it's extremely expensive. Ideally, when you're working with a group like that, because they do it so often, you're hoping that you can get good results. Recently, we were at the St. Francis City Council meeting, and they are in the process. They had 14 applicants. They reduced that to 6 semifinalists. And of those 6, I don't believe anybody in those 6 had more than 6 years' experience in the public sector. And I don't know if any of those were actually in senior management. So similar process has been started down in Ramsey. They have not decided yet whether they're going to use an outside agency, but they have finally posted something to get the ball rolling down there. They have until May 6th to have that's when their administrator or manager leaves. So there's a fair amount of this going on. I said it's a very expensive process if we go with an outside agency, and it doesn't guarantee. Some of the agencies will guarantee the person will stick around for a year. I'm not quite sure what they do if they don't. We get our money back.
I'm sorry, Mayor?
Yes.
They actually conduct the process again for you.
No charge?
No charge.
Okay.
Well, except expenses, mileage, et cetera, but otherwise no charge.
Okay. So one is the consideration, what is the job title we're looking for so that we can formulate the rest of the plans? And then secondly, do we want to see what we can do on our own? Do we want to get prices from the outside agencies for their consideration so we can keep this moving forward? Councilmember Blake, can you start to
You
say something?
answered it already.
Okay. Other
What's
questions?
the estimate for expense?
The initial one that Frank got was $24,500. And then any additional efforts on their part would be billed at $220 an hour. So the package would be $24,500, and above and beyond is $220 an hour.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
to you, Councilmember Blake and Minister Boyles, do you feel confident that you can handle this process?
Who, us, 3 of us?
Yeah.
I think the answer should come from Administrator Boyles. How do you feel about taking this on? Because you would be spearheading it.
Mayor?
You may, sir.
It is with some hesitation. I think about the 6 months that we are going to, which is half over already.
Yes.
And the things that we've tried to do, and some of the difficulties we've had. And they seem to come back, in my estimation, to personnel. And I'm not trying to be critical of anybody. I'm just saying we may have had the wrong level of people in the wrong position. They tried. They couldn't handle it all. And that happens in this world. I would hate to be talking to someone a year from now and say, yeah, I was over it now then. And we got them an administrator. They're gone. Or they're having the same kinds of problems. I think I've heard you agree, just as I've listened, that this is the single most important thing that this city council can do, to hire the right person. My perspective is aim to the future. So the past was a clerk treasurer. Great. The future, and I'm biased on this, there's no question, is a city administrator. You want someone who is growing with the city, and I appreciate you're not one of these kinds of growth communities, but you're still growing nonetheless, and there's a whole variety of things you want to do. Hire the person who can provide, or at least assist you in providing, that capacity. Who can do that best? I'm not in the headhunting business. I know a lot of people who are. I've talked with them, I've worked with them even on as kind of a staff support, and I'm very comfortable there. But if I conducted that for you and then failed, I would feel like the entire, and you should feel the same way, that the entire experience was a failure. $24,500 is a lot of money. But there's a lot of money you can lose in other ways by simply making a decision you thought was right, but wasn't right. These guys don't guarantee, but they come close. They do, and I have a bias towards one company, and certainly we can go and check with other companies. I'm familiar with at least other ones who are very active in this. These guys are used to this field. They have people that follow them. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on about this, but I think that's an important consideration if I were sitting in your seat. And I'll be darned, there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I forgot. Maybe that's part of the problem.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
maybe we have to bite the bullet on some of this stuff so that we do it right the first time and do the best we can. I think there's something we need to address, and I asked Administrator Boyles to have this kind of information, but the cost it would be to go with an administrator and the cost it would be to go to a clerk manager. Maybe not a clerk treasurer, but a clerk manager.
One of the things that some of the smaller cities are doing is they have what they call an administrative clerk. So it's not the clerk treasurer position anymore, but it's in between a full administrator and a clerk.
Yeah.
So they have the administrative responsibilities. And I think it would be incumbent on us to your point, what is the price range for those individuals? So we understand, and let me first put that out there, as Frank had said. Is there a consensus among the council that we're not, at this point, looking to do what we did and go back to a clerk treasurer as our senior person?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Alves.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to understand what that cost differences are before we say,
Okay, so what you would like to see is what's the market range for clerk treasurer, administrative clerk, and administrator?
yeah, and if we say we're gonna have an administrator, what is the support structure underneath that gonna take versus what we had? So what's our all-in cost?
Okay.
And I guess I tend to agree with Frank's comments on, we've spent at least, I'm guessing, $20,000 with some of the legal issues that we've had, and with what Frank is costing us on not that Frank's not doing a great job, but Frank's burn rate's pretty high, so we've spent at least $20,000 in the last 6 months, so I would propose that we look to an outside firm that does this for a living to spend another $24,000 and make sure we've got the right one.
So you want to see the comparison. What was the other comment you had, Jason?
My only other comment is, I think we spend the 24.5 and get.
How about before that, though, you had said you wanted to see the
Well, so we
market,
have
market range.
so we had
Oh, the all-in.
the all-in cost, right? So what's the support structure underneath that? So I'm gonna say, in Lori's tenure, there was a full-time spot, another full-time spot, and a part-time spot. What, if we do a city administrator, what else is the support structure that we need to make that happen? Is it another full-time person and a part-time person, or is there a third person to do the treasury duties, or is that gonna be a third party that we've gotta pay?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
we did kind of talk about this, so Frank, did you bring any information about that?
I'm sorry, I do not have complete information for you on those topics, but I will certainly get it.
And I think that we do have to come up with the all-in.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, what does this mean? An administrator, if he's not going to be doing the treasury position, then how much is it gonna cost us to get someone who's able to do that? And then what other positions do we need within the office? And so, I mean, we do need the all-in, you're right.
So what's the org structure look like, and what's the period cost associated with that org structure under each one of those scenarios?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember
Now,
Blight.
one more question. If we meet and get this information and we wait another whole month before we make a decision, we're wasting a lot of time. Is there a possibility we could meet and we could get this information? We could maybe, work this out, three of us, and call a special meeting so we wouldn't have a whole month before we would start to pursue this administrator or the clerk or whatever we decide.
Good idea.
Yes, that can be done.
Okay, good. Because we gotta start moving. Frank's gotta get out on the lake.
The other thing that I would like the authorization for Linda and I to work with Frank on is we need to see where, it's wonderful to say, let's engage the outside services. But I do think we need to take a look at where our budget is right now and what we have left this year. Because that may factor into our decision, a couple of our decisions. But certainly there have been extraordinary expenses this year, and they're not going away soon, and an extra $25,000 on top of that needs to fit somewhere in the budget. Something's going to have to be squeezed here, and as a council, we're going to have to say, within the general fund we have, this is going to have to be put on the back burner so we can take care of this critical business. So if council is okay with Linda and I working with Frank to get those numbers together so we can present that at the same time we have a decision-making meeting.
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Alders.
so can this only come out of the general fund?
You know, everything else is pretty much dedicated monies. We went, in the old system, we had categories in the budget, but now it's general fund, or it's fire department, or it's dedicated road fund, so we really don't have another place to take it. The other expectation is whatever we budgeted last year, with the price of fuel, I'm going to only anticipate that fuel itself will be probably twice what we budgeted, and hauling, so gravel and that type of thing, will probably be significantly increased too. Anything that we're paying that's related to fuel. So even if we could realistically take it from another part of the budget, I don't know there's going to be a lot of flex anywhere else right now, just with all the other costs going up. So we might have to have a quarter year review of the budget and say, what's realistic with the prices going the way they are?
We call it a bake sale.
We did have a resident at one time
I do
wanted to use
bake.
this for a bingo hall and use the proceeds to go for the city, so.
Mr. Mayor,
It's a lost and found bake sale.
Councilmember Greenberg.
would the League of Minnesota Cities have some possible candidates?
We would advertise as far as which? As far as helping us find somebody or candidates for the office?
Candidates for the office.
We would advertise through the league. Everybody looking for these types of jobs, the first place they go is the league bulletin board. So there is a site on the league that lists all the openings. We would probably also, whether we did it ourselves or worked with an outside agency, take a look at other more traditional business avenues, the Indeeds of the world and some of those other search agencies. One outside agency that's currently working with another city has indicated they're probably going to also have to consider the private sector experience, just because in the public sector, there's such a demand that people with actual administrative experience, you're either getting assistant administrators or people out of school that maybe don't have a lot of years in the, a lot of people with years in this are retiring and doing, Frank's doing, and interiming or getting out on the lake. So we would start with the league and the traditional public sector sources, but I would also expect we would advertise in more private sector areas as well. Because if you've got somebody with managerial experience, we would have to make sure it matches up to public sector requirements. But right now, I think that, like I say, when St. Francis, their top 6, not a one of them had more than 6 years in. And that tells you something. And right now, I could name 12 cities that are looking for administrators.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Boyles.
just a point of clarification. Do I hear the council desiring the hiring committee, if you will, to do some due diligence on the hiring, on these headhunting firms? Sorry, bad name, but is that what I understand? In addition to the total cost financing, or total cost? Thank you.
Yeah, so what I had was researching that total cost and then looking at the budget. The third thing I had was, where does any of this fit in the budget?
What do we have to do with them?
All right. So with that said, the direction from the council is for the hiring committee, Councilmember Blake and myself, to continue to work with Frank at the options, the cost structure, the all-in cost for office team, and to evaluate budget capacity going forward.
And to look at what the different hiring agencies' costs would be and come with a recommendation.
Costs and services?
Yeah, so if we go after a ABC company, what are they gonna provide? How much is it gonna cost?
Gotcha.
All right, do we have agreement from the council? That's how we want to proceed. And then as we get the information, we'll call a special meeting to give updates and get decisions.
Sounds good.
All right? Mr. Boyles, you, Natalie, you got that? As far as
Yep.
what we- Okay. Item D. So we're fast coming up in July 1st. And obviously, our biggest priority is this search that's going on. And obviously, keeping everything else that the city's responsible for going forward, making sure building permits and projects are all going forward properly. But the request Frank has here is there something in addition that the council sees as absolute necessity or priorities to complete before July 1st? Obviously, we're in an election year, so there's some things critical to elections. So the recommendation here is, rather than brainstorm, is to ask every council member to come up with up to 5 priority items and forward those into Frank, and have Frank then compile those, and where he sees overlap, where multiple council members have had the same item, obviously those would be considered near the top of the list, and other ones will be put in there saying, gee, this would be nice if the staff can get to it, but these are actually absolutely critical. So the request is to have each of us, in the next couple of days, get those to Frank so he can compile a list and send that back to us of from the list we've submitted, what he sees as priorities, and that he and the staff can actually do by July 1st. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at Leah like maybe it doesn't.
No, it makes sense, just thinking.
Okay.
Seems
So-
like his plate is pretty full.
Yeah, and-
What we've got going right now, than to be thinking we have.
Well,
more
I
to
think
add
that
to
this
it.
is not so much to say, here's more things we want to put on your plate, but here's some things that maybe you have to take off your plate because these really have to be done before you leave. I mean, the elections, we have to do training, we have to select judges, we have to, the first step was the precincts and polling places we did tonight. But there are certain things that are time sensitive. I mean, the absentee ballots, the absentee voting for the primaries, I think, starts in June. So there's certain things that have to be put in place. So if we identify that, it's just we're trying to not drop the ball while the day-to-day stuff gets overwhelming. We say, make sure these 3, 5, whatever, these things are taken care of. And if the other things have to be put aside, we understand. What we don't want to do is have somebody new starting in July and have to hit the ground running of the elections and other things burning down, if we can avoid some of that. And that will be, we'll have to say, what does that mean for road projects this year? And what does that mean for, if people say these are critical items, where do they fit? Then the council's going to have to come back and say, I understand that. Maybe road items are off this year. We reserve that money and put that towards a good road project that actually starts in the fall season like it should. Councilmember Alders.
So how many items are time-bound like this? Because it's election, so that's probably the no-fail list. I would put that on mine, but is there levies or taxes with the homeowners and getting that stuff to the county? Is that, what are the bookends? Are we talking about elections? Are we talking about the capital project list that we went through with, like, in the November, January timeframe that said, hey, here are the capital improvement items that we want to make sure we get done this year? Or is there some time-bound things that?
Well, I would say to answer that, the budget would be one. We have to factor in that because in this transition period, anything Frank can do to help us with the budget, because somebody brand new is going to come in and step right into the middle of the budget cycle. The capital plan, those things that
Some are urgent, some are.
some are urgent, some are not. The truck has been ordered.
Yeah.
That's the big one. The mower, I think they're looking at alternatives for potentially used mowers, other new mowers on a discount. Again, all of these things are getting more expensive. So we can put it down there and say, okay, the capital plan expenditures that we agreed on last year, for 2 reasons, maybe aren't going to get done this year. One, that might be an area where we need the money for something else. And we have the option of, because we're also putting money aside for future capital expenditures, we can potentially delay that. 2 is, like in the road projects, as Shane was explaining at our last meeting, we're pretty much out of the cycle for this year, because by the time we would have all the public hearings, we wouldn't be even starting things until August. We probably wouldn't be able to get road projects completed before snowfall.
We take a break.
So we reserve the money as best we can and put it towards future projects. But those are the types of things we want to say, what do we know are critical and time-bound? What are things that we'd love to see, but if we have to put them off, we have to put them off. So at least there's council agreement on it. And then Frank can take that and say, okay, yeah, that is got to be done now, where this can be put off, and we can either reserve the funds or utilize the funds in a different way. Because that's going to be the other question is, the funds as they're dedicated right now, can they be used for something else as part of the general fund, or are they bound by how we set the budget? Councilmember Blake.
Can we, what about the funds we got from pull tabs for the Hockey Association? Can that be used just there, or can that be pushed over to something else?
That can be utilized in other areas. We did tell the
How
Hockey
much was that
Association
again?
we were going to do some specific things with one of the checks they sent in, and I believe that was, I hate to use numbers, but maybe $14,000. But every quarter they continue to send in money, and it isn't specifically tied to a project. So there are some reserves there. There's also, we're working with the state legislature to see what can be done for small cities, so that some additional road funds. If they give us road funds, it's got to go to a road project of some sort.
Sure.
But if they give us assistance for small cities, we can utilize that wherever. The other thing that I think we should investigate is the ARPA funds. We have, again, we will have another 250,000 coming in August. There are ARPA funds, and some of the allowable uses for that is for shortfalls that occurred elsewhere. So we would just have to see if anything that, from the ARPA funds, obviously we're trying to use that for internet, but if there's something that could be utilized there to help us out as well, we would check with the league and with the state to make sure that what we would like to spend it on is legal under the federal guidelines.
Okay.
But we want to be careful not to, again, because we have so little and we have such a big need on the internet side, we want to be careful there too. We don't want to short ourselves somewhere else. We're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul here. So that's why it's going to take some thorough investigation of what's budgeted and what we have to spend and how we go forward with that. So. And maybe some of this then has to be allotted in times. This is where we want to go, but we can't get there yet. But in the budget cycle, we put in more for next year. So when we're talking about all-in costs, maybe there needs to be more staffing in the office. But maybe we can't do it yet this year, but we make sure we budget it. And that's, June, July. That wasn't me slamming the table. I just wanted to know.
That was me dropping.
Other questions or comments? So can we say by midweek we have up to 5 items? Doesn't have to be 5, but what your top priorities are to Frank?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Boyles?
Would the council mind if there are 5, put the most important as 1 and the least important as 5, or turn it over, but tell me, just so I have a sense, because then I can at least, it's a crude way of doing things, but we can fine tune it a little more. Gee whiz, I've got 3 who say this is number 1. Well, that's pretty important then.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Rainville?
and even with all these great minds here, if we miss something that Frank notices, that you'll add that to the list.
Yeah, Frank gets to contribute to the list as well. And,
Oh, yeah.
not Natalie though, 'cause she's going to be off on vacation. All right, so Wednesday, March 16th. Anything else on that one? All right, we'll move on. City participation cost declaration of May 7th, 2022 is recycling day now then. Typically, and per our contract, we have to have 2 recycling events per year. We typically have one in the first weekend in May and one in September after Labor Day. The first weekend in May is Saturday, May 7th. Is the council willing to participate as we have in years past to staff that along with Kelly, who would normally be there on Saturday, but to extend the hours and staff that as we have done in the past?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville?
I am willing to work it.
Mr. Mayor, I think I'm gonna be in Ireland that weekend, so.
That would be a reasonable excuse.
But I'll never check, I don't have the dates with me, so I might be off, so I will call you or whoever I'm supposed to let know.
Okay.
But I'll go, if I'm back here, I'll go, I'll be there.
Jason?
May 7th is a ways off, but if I'm here, I will definitely work it.
All right. Joel?
I'm putting it in my phone right now.
Okay, secondarily, and this is critical for the newsletter that we're working on right now. We are investigating potentially having no-cost items again. So A1 Appliance Recycling has said they will supply a trailer. We're waiting to hear on fuel and hauling cost on that. Previously, they would supply a trailer. All the appliances are free, but it costs us a few $100s for liability and hauling and fuel. So they're getting together those costs. If A1 is willing to do that again, all appliances at no cost, if we just cover their hauling fees. Is the council willing to concede those for that one time?
Mr. Mayor, are you just saying appliances, or are you talking tires and everything else again?
Appliances first.
Okay.
We're also checking with the Mosquito Control District, who took the tires last time, to see if they will do that again. We have not found an electronics vendor who will work with us and partner with us on this to do anything free. So my recommendation is, if the Mosquito Control District will take the tires free, we give tires free. Maybe this time we limit the number of tires, depending on what the district says. So it's 4 or 8 per household, rather than trailer loads of tractor tires. Appliances are whatever we can fit in the trailer. We're also working a deal with A1 that potentially every time we get 10 appliances, they will send out a box truck and take them for free. So we're going to work that out with the team on the recycling. But for this one, we just need to know if we can do tires for free, if we can do appliances free. We want to put that in the newsletter. The electronics would be at normal fee. We'd have to have somebody there collecting the fee for electronics. So, Councilmember Rainville.
So are this appliances at no cost, no, excuse me, no cost, tires, is that just for the 8 to 1 of the recycle day, or is that till the end of the day when?
I would say end of the day.
Okay, and, okay, so,
Whatever we can fit in the trailer, but yes, end of the
Okay.
day. And A1 did say if we have more and we want to put them aside, they'll come pick them up.
okay.
Well, I don't understand. So they're gonna bring stuff in even after we're all finished?
Kelly works till 5.
So
Oh, okay,
So
because I thought.
typically, when
want
we
someone
leave,
there.
the place is closed,
Yeah,
but Kelly will
okay.
still be there till 5 on
Okay, that's
Saturday.
good.
so.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
to try to eliminate, is it possible to consider having Kelly, instead of working till 5, just do this 8 to 1, or maybe go 8 to 2, and that's the free period, and then we close it?
Yeah.
It would make sense, because otherwise he's got to deal with the electronics.
Right. And there's, unless one of us wants to sit there and collect the money, so,
It would be
So that
Linda,
would-
but she's going to be in Ireland, so.
I know. So I would say we would maybe change it to 8 to, we could still go 8 to 1, there'll be some carryover, close it at 2. And then Kelly's off when we're all done cleaning up. No, we can post that in the website, on the newsletter.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Boyles?
inevitably in situations like this, when you do good, someone decides to come late and leave their present for you. The good news is we do have cameras there
Right.
and license readers. And we'll pay them a visit. So hopefully that will curb that kind of desire.
And in this case, if we have tires and appliances for free, that's not going to be a big deal. That's just going to be the electronics.
Mr. Mayor, do we want to put some, I'll say, boxes around tires? Is it passenger car tires and trailer tires? It's not.
Depends on what the mosquito control district tells us. Their interest is keeping them out of ditches and farm fields, and if they'll take the tractor tires, then that's a good way to get rid of them. I think our limitations will be what the district tells us. If they're going to take them for free and they only want car tires off the rim, that's what's free.
Okay, so you'll put that in the newsletter depending on what the feedback is?
Yep.
Okay.
And then typically we also put a discount coupon in there. I don't know if we want to go, we typically do $2, we want to do $5, but that's something where it used to be on recycling day, and then we started letting people use it at other times throughout the year. And it was always on an appliance, and then we just kind of got loose and said it can be on anything. We just have to decide if we're going to put a coupon in there, is it time bound and is it limited to what you can use it on? If we're going to give them $2 off on anything, then so be it. And I think $2 off on anything without a time on it would be reasonable. It shows us people are reading the newsletter. So.
So, Mr.
Councilmember
Mayor, does
Blake.
this mean, remember last time, I think, Mary, you were checking licenses? What
No.
was that
We
about?
had, that was when we had the big thing, because the place had been closed down for a period of time.
We had the 2 days.
And we had the postcard that went out,
Yes,
and that went out all over, and people, so we wanted to see their postcard and that they actually lived here.
Yeah.
To try and
and
stem.
we don't do that usually, we don't check to see if they actually live here? Okay, I just was wondering.
So a lot of our, especially cardboard recycling, comes from outside the city.
Okay.
And people that know we take tires and drive through town here, typically they go.
Okay.
It's been so much better since it's been staffed, because we just don't have things being left like we did before. So our margins on that are much better than they used to be. Anything else on that? So council that are here will be participating. We're gonna operate from 8 to 1, have the whole place wrapped up by 2, so any stragglers, we'll just make sure we're out of there by 2. They still get their 6 hours, we'll post it on the website, we'll post it at the recycling center, and we will finish up the discussions on free items, and if we can get free appliances and tires, everybody's okay with putting that in the newsletter and accepting that. And electronics will be normal price, so we'll have to have a cashier.
Okay.
Okay? Anything else on recycling day?
Oh.
All right. IWIP.
Bring it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
so we were at the meeting this past month, Dan, Brian, and myself. The 1W1P, one watershed, one plan, is now in 60-day consideration by the state. Around June 1st to July 31st will be the official time for Nowthen to join. So I guess what I'm doing is giving you a second heads up. We had lightly touched on this subject. I don't know if it was a couple council meetings ago now. So there was an emailed link that went to their site. There was a couple of pages of documentation I had. Gives in there, the documentation gives in there reasons why to join. Basically, if you don't want to join, you don't have to. We can give Nowthen's opinion at the upper which is 7 cities, so we'd be one of 7 voices. So even if we said no, the rest of them may say yes. Also, if we joined, we could depart at any time. Let's say if we were into it 6 months and it isn't exactly what we thought, we could exit. Part of their appeal to us is access to over $1 million in funding to be able to get access to with a 10% match over a 2-year period. So $500,000 for quite a few entities, going all the way up to Aiken County, Crow Wing, Morrison County, Kennebec County, Benton County, Sherburne. So it's a lot of money, but there's a lot of land there that would have access to that. So they're trying to entice us into it by saying you would have access to this funding with a 10% match. So by, let me go back to that date, June 1st, we'll be looking to, make a vote. So Jamie's stoking the fires. He's our representative that we hired. And he's like, well, get your council thinking about it because we need to make a decision. We're gonna be voting. So being that we, anyway, I think I said enough.
So if what happens to the Upper River if this 1W1P goes through.
We continue to do what we've been doing. That is monitoring our own water, approving projects in our own backyards, managing our budget, listening to what Bowser says and trying to implement its requirements. We keep doing that, but then with the 1W1P, we get access to these funds.
So the
That
Upper
is-
River keeps operating, we still keep paying into that.
Yeah. Now, one of the questions it says in this documentation is, what will joining the 1W1P cost? Says nothing except participation time. The JP will not have the authority to compel members to pay dues. Operating expenses are anticipated to be covered with grant funds. Your representative will be committing time to participate in meetings and you may choose to compensate them for your time and mileage. Expect quarterly meetings except for those who choose to participate in an executive committee that meets up to monthly. So there would be, like, say, if we would say, yeah, we're interested in, you know, getting some work done here and now, then there would be, you know, Jamie would be our liaison to help us manage some of those.
So the city would have a representative on the quarterly meetings?
We are considering at this point appointing someone. No one's really readily raising their hand in the upper room to be a representative to the 1W1P. But I will say Dan Bryan's name has been floated. No one's jumping at the opportunity, shall I put it that way? But this past meeting, we were like, we need to have a vote. We need to have a representative. So think about it.
What's your recommendation?
I see it this way. If Nowthen ever wanted to have work done, they would have access to the funds. If Nowthen decided 2-3 months into it, 6 months into it, a year into it, nothing's happening, there's no benefit to us, we can exit. So at this point, I don't know if the appetite to have work done in our backyard is there, but that doesn't mean in a year or two there might be new appetite for work done here and now then. Lake George has shoreline restoration projects all the time. The Rum River in St. Francis has shoreline restoration projects done, and they're constantly reaching out to those funds to have stuff done.
How about
Granted-
Twin Lakes?
Granted, Lake George is a bigger lake and it's got a larger beach presence. Our biggest lake, you know, East Twin, has a few people on it, but I haven't poked around Twin, haven't invited anyone in there to poke around to see what could be done to it. That gets, you know what I mean? I mean, we just haven't pursued anything here now.
It's a lot different when you've got the rum running through like St. Francis and Oak Grove do, because you got restoration on both sides and what people have been building. And so shoreline restoration is a big one. Lake George with a regional park on it certainly garners a lot of attention. It's one of the problems we've had with the watershed is the participation. There's really never been a project in Nowthen that we've ever asked for any monies for. So I would recommend at this point, we have a little time to think about it. People go back and if you haven't read it, read the email that Joel had sent out on this and come back with more specific questions. If you have questions for Joel, please forward them to Frank to get to Joel and the rest of the council. Or we can, after you've read it or reread it, get those questions and we can discuss it again when we have more information internally. And then you'll know more whether somebody like a Dan Bryan is going to be a representative there. Because I certainly trust Dan to watch to fight for us if there's a project and to watch the finances if this scope grows,
Mr. Mayor.
which kind of how we found with the watershed, it just kept growing. So.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Greenberg.
Here's the interesting crux of the matter. We may vote as a council to not be a part of 1W1P, but the URRWMO may vote Dan Bryan to be our representative.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
Joel, will he be given any kind of salary or incentive to take that position?
Interesting that you should bring that up. That was kind of floated around at the meeting, and I could put in a RCA, much like the administrator of the market, farmer's market, you know. He will have to do this above and beyond going to a upper rum meeting. He will now have meetings to go to the 1W1P as well.
Okay, but if he's representing all seven,
Yeah.
then why would we be the only ones paying it? It
Oh,
should,
that's a good idea.
well, all
I was
seven
gonna say,
should
would it
be,
make sense to have the
have everybody,
Upper Rum contribute like they do for
Yeah.
their secretary and.
yeah.
Right, right.
So it should be brought back to them that he should receive something for this,
Sure.
but I think it should be put in by all seven.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
He represents, not just us.
Yeah.
Not that we're not floating in money, but.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Boyles.
just a point of clarification. So June 1 is the deadline for our vote to be communicated to the WMO?
It sounded-
I think-
The open enrollment was June 1st to July 31st.
I was just going to say, if we had to communicate that, we'd have to do it at our May 12th meeting.
Have you confirmed that open enrollment's June 1st to July 31st? Or is there specific by city?
I'm reading it right now. The initial period to join will be approximately June 1st to July 31st.
It sounds like it's an enrollment window.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
to Councilmember Greenberg. Is there anything in the document, I'm trying to remember back, reading it, that if we choose not to go, what are our responsibilities then? And are there any, do we think, we know any costs associated with what those responsibilities would be if we took on the task that that agency does for us now? We
Well,
spend a lot of
That
money.
agency's not doing anything for us.
Well, let me finish. So we spend a lot of money with them every year, and we have never gotten a penny back. Some of that is on us and that we haven't provided projects. But we haven't provided projects because we haven't come up with any. And to make work is not, that's foolish to do that. My fear is that they're dangling this millions of dollars. Well, we don't get anything in a pie this big. Pie's gonna be this big. We'll never see a penny. And we'll be still spending that money. But I don't know if we really have any alternative, because if something does hit the fan, then we're gonna be responsible.
But the $1 million over the 7 counties
Yeah,
is a matching grant too.
well, correct, you have to match it, but there are, when you look at those other counties and they're big, we have farming here, but those are big farming areas, and the damages that, and I don't wanna, be disrespectful to the farmers or anything like that, but farmers and the
The runoff.
yeah, the chemicals they use go into the water stream, and there's major problems. The culverts that get filled in, things like that. We're gonna try to compete with that, and I don't think our little Twin Lakes is gonna,
Well, the other thing is in some of those counties, it's also, the lakes are the major attraction,
Right.
recreational
You got
attraction.
Mille Lacs Lake, yeah. You
Which,
Yeah.
well, ours is a pretty popular little fishing lake. It's never to
Nah.
compete with lakes with resorts.
got- Yeah.
All right,
I get
so review it. Questions for Joel to Frank. Frank will then forward them to Joel and the rest of us.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Boyles?
Yes, thank you.
All right, anything else on that, Joel?
Just one last thing. One of the bullet points, pros of joining the JPE or the 1WMP. No dues and the JPE can't compel parties to pay.
So it's no cost to us.
That's what they're saying.
But we're
And last bullet point, you can leave JPE at any time. But to the mayor's point, we don't have any projects here. Why are we interested in a project along Mille Lacs Lake when they put in new cattails on the northern edge? Why would we be interested in that?
And, Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Rainville?
to Councilmember Greenberg, and if we don't join, we're still gonna be in the Upper Rum River and paying them every year.
Watching our backyard.
Yeah, we're still gonna pay them.
Because
so.
if they do something in St. Francis, you can actually drive there and see what they're doing. Or if they're doing something at Lake George, you can go there. Now, you can go up to Aiken County as well, but it's highly unlikely you're gonna go see the ditch project up there. So you're just gonna be making a decision on something you have no pertinent information on. So I'm slightly showing a little bias here.
Yeah, you be careful.
Well, Linda was thinking about it, but that ditch project is going on, well, she's in Ireland, so.
But they have ditches in
Otherwise,
Ireland.
I'd go to Aiken, you can count on it.
They are still digging turf in Ireland, though. You enjoy that. So. All right, anything else on the 1W1P?
One last thing.
Yes, sir.
If you cannot find that link or need these 2 pages resent, I can make that happen again.
Get resent already.
And just send them to Frank and he can send
I
them.
sent him to Frank, he'll resend it.
Okay.
Okay, one last call on 1W1P. We're done. Mary, you want an update on the newsletter?
Yeah, just a quick excuse me, I have bronchitis and it's, every time I bring air in, it just kills me. So, Councilmember Blake and I volunteered, based on Frank's request for help. We met today. Linda has already, made calls to some of the different, consultants, that, have ads in the paper, or articles in the paper. So she's working that. I'm putting a list together for businesses that Adrian will send out a letter to the businesses, asking them for ads. The mayor is gonna work with public safety, so the police and fire. I'll make sure that the community groups get their ads in. And I think we'll be fine. Joel, I think
Joel's gonna
today.
work on some design stuff.
Yeah.
Upper Rum article.
He's up to rum article.
Yeah. Yeah, he's gonna do an article.
Yeah.
So I think we're on board and I think we'll be
So
successful.
the deadline for the ads and the articles would be that
2 weeks.
week
from
of the
tomorrow.
21st, so
The 20th.
everything has to be in by 2 weeks from tomorrow.
25th.
It'll go to the printer
that's-
for design work. Should be in the mailboxes the 3rd week of April, which would give people a week plus before the,
Third week of May, or first week of May. The article, everything will be due back in by noon on Friday, the 25th. And then from there, it'll go to the design house. And then from there to the printer. The design house will most likely be the printer, and then from there it goes to the post office. And hit the post office, hit the mailboxes the first week of May. So what we would be looking at is towards the end of April, maybe the week of the 18th, is council will get a preview to look at for any last weeks. And I would ask if somebody has something to get that to Frank, if they want to do something in the newsletter.
and then just as a consideration, that if people are considering things they think would be germane for the newsletter, future newsletters, keep those ideas in mind and forward those to Frank, and he can start a file for
Yep.
the next
problem.
person in that role to to have information that's timely.
Yeah. And what I did is I took the last, I think, 6 newsletters and did a spreadsheet of who advertised, who had articles, who did this, who did that, and then we're focusing on those again. And frequently asked questions, we talked about frequently asked questions today, a column of, you know, what do the residents call in and ask for? You know, some updates on codes. Some of it will be just a reprint of something else that we did last spring on how to rent the pavilions at Twin Lake Parks, you know, things like that. Liz, I think, had given us some stuff on code ordinances, and so we'll just reuse those because it's all still the same and it's all pertinent, so.
And obviously, you know, it's a coordinated effort here. Some of the articles may need to be modified to fit, you know, we don't know how many ads are coming in.
Right. I got my first one today.
So as those things, you'll just see what fits before we, without having to expand the newsletter and
Right.
pay more costs.
Yep.
But it goes out to approximately, I think, what they used to say, 1,500 homes and
1,500
businesses.
business,
so.
yeah.
Any other questions on that? Seeing none, I got one thing left on the agenda, and it's
Move
not
to
even
adjourn.
8:40.
Move to adjourn.
I second.
We have a motion, a second, we are adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.